Hello, everyone. Happy Pride. My name is Kirsten, and I am normally found at the Harvey Smith Library, but today I'm in my very, very sunny living room with my son, Isaac.
Hello.
And we are going to be doing little mother-son book recommendations for Pride Month. So I will start off because I'm the mother. I would like to recommend, first of all, Mary Oliver, the poet, the wonderful poet, Mary Oliver, who died just last year. She was with her partner, Molly Cook, for over 40 years. She wrote of nature. She was an avid walker. She was beloved for her poem, The Summer Day, and for Wild Geese. And I think a lot of times when we read her nature poetry, we don't always read it with the lens of it being from a lesbian poet. But an article that Isaac had shared with me, surprisingly, just pointed out some of the more queer erotic nature of her poems. And so, for instance, in Wild Geese, one of my favorite poems by Mary Oliver, she writes, "You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves." And so just validating that our bodies should love what and who they love. And so that is Mary Oliver, wonderful gay poet.
Great pick.
Thanks, Isaac.
So my first selection is going to be a queer classic published all the way back in 1956. It is Giovanni's Room by the incredible African-American writer James Baldwin. It is about an American living in Paris in the 1950s and his relationship with an Italian man named Giovanni, who he meets at a gay bar in Paris. And, what really struck me when I read this book for the first time was that even though it was written in the 50s, it feels super, super current. Even the writing feels very current, but especially the themes, some of the major themes in the book are of, alienation and isolation. As the title suggests, much of the book takes place within the room of Giovanni, this Italian man. And so I think that actually in this current moment of pandemic and COVID-19, it might actually be sort of relevant to some readers. And then it also just, I think, gives a super interesting glimpse into gay or queer life of Paris in the 1950s. I really love the sense of place that the book has. The first time I read it, I was actually traveling in Europe and I was visiting Paris, and it made me sort of see the city in a totally different light. And just a bonus little sort of Winnipeg connection. There was a former long-standing gay bar in Winnipeg called Gio's, which closed in 2013, but it was originally called Giovanni's Room in honor of this book when it first opened at its initial Sherbrooke Street location in 1986.
Very interesting. Always learning. So that's interesting that you have the Winnipeg connection, but also sort of talking about how he wrote about Paris as place, but that Paris was also sort of almost like a character in the book, because my next book recommendation is Little Fish by Casey Plett. And certainly Winnipeg figures very strongly in this book. But this book is about Wendy, a 30-year-old trans woman who is living in Winnipeg. There are a lot of very familiar locations, certainly very familiar to my neighborhood. And we explore her life and also this sort of mystery that she's uncovering, because she gets a few clues that perhaps her Mennonite Opa perhaps was also trans. And so it's a really unique character. I've never really read a voice like hers before, or the voices of her trans friends. It's honest, it's real, it's heartbreaking, and it's a really sort of complex story that, like I said, a really unique voice. And I recommend it and have been recommending it actually quite often wherever I go. So that is Little Fish by Casey Plett.
Yeah, I love Little Fish.
Yes.
And especially living in sort of the West End, Wolseley, West Broadway area, there's so many sort of references to that area, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So my second selection is a much newer book. Newer than Giovanni's Room. It was actually just published this year in January. It's called Cleanness by American author Garth Greenwell. And it's something of a follow-up to his 2016 novel, What Belongs to You. It has the same narrator and same protagonist. Though it's not really a sequel, you don't have to necessarily read them in order. But it's... The book follows an American teaching at a university in Sofia, Bulgaria, and his experiences and relationships in the city, and in particular, his relationship with this one man who he refers to as R throughout the book. I love Garth Greenwell's writing. What Belongs to You is also one of my favorite books. His prose is just so beautiful. He writes in these really gorgeous long sentences that are very sort of introspective. A lot of them is sort of what's going on in the narrator's mind. Very, very descriptive writing. And I particularly like the way that he writes about queer sex and desire. I think it's so refreshing. Shame and desire and sort of the relationship between those two things for queer men is a major theme in the book. And yeah, he really gets that in a couple chapters in particular, which are quite explicit. So just sort of a warning there, I guess. He's actually been quoted in interviews as saying that with this book, he was trying to write something that was 100% pornographic and 100% high art, which I think he absolutely does. So yes, there's another selection for you.
Sounds good. So we started off with some queer erotic with Mary Oliver, and we end up with some queer erotic with Garth Greenwell. So those are some of our recommendations for this Pride Month. Thanks, Isaac, for joining me.
Thanks, Mom.
All right, and we will see all of you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Happy Pride.
Did you know that we've made it easier to find more great queer books and resources in our library catalog? Just type LGBTQ into the search bar on our homepage and you'll have access to all of our resources with that tag. Enjoy! And remember, for more great content, please subscribe to our Winnipeg Public Library YouTube channel.